Welcome to the 111 Approach podcast, your go-to space for deep thoughts, real talk, and exploration of everything from spirituality to self-development and the mysteries of life with some light-hearted humour along the way. I'm your host, Lakshmi, aka the 1 Minute Healer, and each episode will dive into different topics, sometimes personal, sometimes thought-provoking, but always authentic. So whether you're here for some new perspectives, inspiration, or just a fresh take on the world with a bit of randomness thrown into the mix, you're definitely in the right place. So what are you waiting for? Let's get into it. Hi, it's Lakshmi here, and before we start this week's episode, I need your help. Next year, I am taking on the biggest charity challenge I've ever done. Now, for those of you who know me well, you know I love to do things for charity ever since I was a child, from sponsored dance-a-thons, sponsored silences. Yes, I know, hard to believe me being quiet, right? Sponsored abseilings down buildings, and last year, even sleeping out on the streets of London in the middle of October in just a sleeping bag. I really try and push and immerse myself in things to raise money for good causes. And next year, I am climbing Mount Kilimanjaro for not one, but two amazing children's charities. Cordwell Children, who help disabled and autistic children all over the world, and Cordwell Youth, who empower at-risk adults aged 11 to 24. Now, this is the biggest challenge I've ever taken on because, number one, the target I need to hit is the biggest one to date. I need to raise £5,000, all of which goes to the charities, because actually the trip and expedition itself is self-funded. But hey, if you're a business and would like to sponsor that side of it, please get in touch with me. And number two, I've never climbed a mountain in my life. Although I did make up my mind at age 5 that I did find a mountain in Canada and claimed it as my own. But that's a story for another day. So please, if you are able to make a donation, no matter how big or small, it will really help me reach that target. And I will be forever grateful to you, as will the children who the money will go to. So thank you again. The link will be in the show notes below. And enjoy this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the 111 Approach podcast. It's me, Lakshmi, aka the 1 Minute Healer, and you should know by now that I always start and finish everything I do with gratitude, including this podcast. So thank you so much for being and listening, and all the feedback that I've been getting and the support. A lot of you have reached out and let me know how much you've enjoyed and resonated with the topics that we've covered, and there's lots more to come. So without further ado, let's get into today's topic and episode. I actually had something else in mind to talk about this week, but considering the day that I'm recording this is the 11th of September, or as most of the world knows it, 9/11, I thought I couldn't not speak about the experience that I had and my mom. I was actually hoping my mom would be able to do this episode with me. I've been wanting to get her on as a guest, but we've just not made the time. But don't worry, she'll be coming on soon enough, and we will definitely circle back to this experience because a lot of people don't know this, but myself and my mom were actually in New York on this day in 2001 when the planes went in. We were actually supposed to be traveling back to England on this day so that I could start my A-levels. So 9/11, everyone can kind of remember that time. It's a very standout time for pretty much everyone in this world, even though we're not American. Like, you say 9/11, what were you doing when you heard the news? You can recall that to a T. So we've all got our 9/11 story. And my 9/11 story was actually the fact that, like I said, I was there with my mom. Our flights were booked back to England for today. So funnily enough, me and my mom had only gone to New York for literally 3 days or 4 days because my mom had managed to get us tickets to the Michael Jackson 30th anniversary celebration, which was a concert at Madison Square Gardens the first show was on September 7th and the second show was on September 10th. And so we had tickets for September 10th. And it was like an incredible lineup. The show, I think, sold out in 2 hours. And they say that the tickets were like amongst the most expensive ever for an event because basically it wasn't just Michael Jackson who was going to be there. It was actually a lot of different artists that were paying tribute to Michael. So the performers, I'll just read out some of the main ones, but there were like so many. It was just insane. So Samuel L. Jackson was like the introduction. There was Usher, there was Maya, there was Whitney Houston, Marlon Brando gave a speech. There was Shaggy, Rayvon. Remember, like Shaggy, it wasn't me, an angel. Mark Anthony, Monica, Liza Minnelli, Destiny's Child, Elizabeth Taylor. And it was also the first time Michael and his brothers, the Jackson Five, were going to perform again after they had obviously parted ways. So it was a big show. So obviously the Jacksons were there, Britney Spears was there, Chris Tucker was there. Who else? Luther Vandross, Missy Elliott, Nelly Furtado. Like the list is endless. I'll be honest, I'm actually reading the list off Wikipedia because still to this day, I only can remember snippets of this concert because obviously the traumatic events that happened the day after the concert. So I'm going to tell you a little story. So sit back. And the story is literally my experience of 9/11 and how my laziness saved mine and my mum's life, I guess. Well, maybe not life, but it saved us from having a more traumatic experience than we did. So, like I said, my mom, massive Michael Jackson fan, like the biggest I've ever met, had bought tickets for us. I think originally she was going to take my sister, because my sister's a massive Michael Jackson fan as well. She's like a ditto copy of my mom. I do love Michael Jackson, but my mom and my sister and my adopted sister Sonia, I have to give her a shout out as well, are like hugely say dedicated to Michael. And so I think because my sister was going through her GCSEs, her final year, it would have been a little bit disruptive to take her out of the school for a couple of days, especially at the start, when they're getting you all prepped for the mock exams and stuff. But I'll have to double check with my mom to see what the reason it was. Sometimes when I look back in the past, there's some really odd choices that have been made. Because I very recently found a diary that I kept of a trip to Kenya. I think it was in 1992. We went, and my brother was like, okay, 89, 90, 91, 90. My brother was 3 years old, but for some reason my dad was like, no, he's too young to go. Like, we'll just go, the four of us. So just me, my sister, my mum and dad went to Kenya and my brother stayed back. So yeah, very strange. Anyway, there must be some reasons behind it, but who knows? Anyway, the past is a past and we just have to accept it, learn the lessons, make peace with it, and then move on. So anyway, going back to, it was just me and my mom. Now that I think back on it, I actually, I used to feel a bit bad that like, oh, why did my sister not go as well, considering she's a bigger fan? But now that I look back on it, it's like, if this was meant to happen, then I'm glad she didn't go, because what we felt during that time, and then also the struggle trying to get back home to England because we were brown, and because of that, all the extra hurdles, extra racism, extra trauma that we endured trying to get back home after the event. I'm kind of glad that it was shielded from her. So yeah, it was supposed to be a fun 4-day trip to New York, and I was so obsessed with America, and I have been since I was a kid. This was like my first kind of grown-up trip to America, where I could kind of live out my American fantasy, I guess. And on top of that, it was awesome to go and see this concert. And I remember we were staying with some family friends of my uncle, and they lived in Long Island, I think. And we were going to stay there for the first couple of nights, and then on the Monday night of the concert, I had booked a hotel actually right opposite the Twin Towers. I had booked this hotel, and then the day we arrived, we were at this uncle's house. So just for the non-Indians who are listening, any person who comes into your house, whether they're related to you or not, you either call them uncle or an auntie. That's just how it goes, okay? So even though this person was not related to me, he's my uncle, he's my actual uncle's friend, I still have to call him an uncle, and his wife an aunt. So anyway, We'd arrived at New York Uncle G's house and told him our plans. We're just chilling for the next couple of days, and then we've got this concert, and then we're staying at this hotel. And he, being the typical Indian, saying, "No, you must stay with us for the whole duration. Why are you going to spend money on a hotel? Come and stay here. I'll arrange a driver, or you can come back at however late you want." I was trying to reason with him because my dad's family don't drink. Right, we grew up in a non-alcoholic, non-meat household, and although I was still vegetarian back then, I drank. Right, I started drinking around 14, I think, and my mum used to like to have a cocktail or two, and we were like, we're in New York. My mum was the one who introduced me to Sex and the City, so I was like, we definitely want to go and have some cosmopolitans. That's one of the reasons we also wanted to stay in a hotel, but also it would have been late after the concert. We also wanted to go out and see like nightlife of New York as well, and not coming back and disturb this very nice family that we barely knew. We hadn't even met them before. But yeah, he made me, and this is where I feel like, things are put into place for a certain reason. So even though we can feel a certain way about things, why didn't it happen for me? Why didn't I get to go? Why didn't that opportunity get put to me? Or why didn't I close that deal? Whatever circumstances happen, I truly believe you have to find the gratitude and the blessing in them, because that uncle made me on that Friday cancel that hotel for Monday. And I was so upset. I was like, no, my mum was trying to calm me down, saying, don't worry, we'll come back again, and we'll stay in a hotel. And I was really upset because I was like, I really wanted to go out. But look at this, that man's insistency. And I think back on it, and I do feel a little bit guilty, because I was like, I was so annoyed with that man, with that uncle, for making me cancel that hotel. But had he not done that, we would have been right there in the thick of it. Whereas now, when it happened, we were at least with people that we kind of somewhat knew, had access to help, when everything went down. But had we been in that hotel room, and this is before the time of WhatsApp. WhatsApp hadn't even existed then. Making international texts or calls was just out of the question, especially from your mobile. So yeah, I think back on that, and I really, truly am so grateful that we cancelled that hotel. Even at the time, I wasn't feeling very grateful. So went to the concert. We'd had a few to drink, let's be honest. Had a good time, came back. And because we were flying out in the evening of the 11th, we hadn't managed to do a lot of sightseeing, because a few days prior, when we were supposed to, New York City had a crazy, crazy rainfall thunderstorm. And it was just insane, like rain droplets the size of, I don't even know, like you could actually see, like, when a kid draws on a piece of paper rain and they draw the droplets, they were that size. It was just insane. It looked fake, right? So we had been stuck in this thunderstorm, so we didn't get to see a lot of the sights. So my mom was trying to get me up in the morning, like 7:30, saying, hurry up, get up. And we've got the whole day. Our flight's not till 9 o'clock in the evening. And we can do all the things that you wanted to do, which was to go and see the sights, Statue of Liberty and Rockefeller Center, Twin Towers, all Empire State Building and all that stuff. But me being hungover and tired and like 17 years old, I was like, oh no, 10 more minutes. And so my mom's there getting ready. She's like, fine, just let her sleep it off, and had the radio on. And all of a sudden, the broadcast was, a plane's just gone into World Trade Center. And we were just carrying on. I had no idea, because for me, World Trade Center, I didn't know what that was. We used to always obviously call it just Twin Towers. And I didn't even know where it was. Like, listen, geography is not my forte. And I was just like, okay, it's like, obviously it's been an accident. I think that's what most people thought. The first plane has gone into a building, freak accident. And so I'd gotten out of bed, finally got myself downstairs, and the family were there watching the news. And they explained, they were like, oh, that's in New York. That's one of the Twin Towers. And I was like, oh my God, that's like literally, we were there literally a couple of hours ago, because we were walking the streets after the concert. And I remember going past
the hotel that we were supposed to stay in. I was like, oh, Mom, we could have just stayed there. Like, I think I made a joke. I was like, should we just go and see if they've got our room still or something like that. I can't, it's so hazy now. It's so far away. I can't remember, but I just remember we were right there and I just got chills. I was like, oh my God, we were right there. That's crazy. And, and then as we were watching it live, the second plane goes in to the building, and that's when everything changed. Everyone just started freaking out. Like the family that we were with, they had an older sister who went to uni in the city, and then she had two younger brothers, and the two boys just started screaming, and I think the auntie started screaming, and I was just like, what is going on? And I just remember somebody kept saying, that's not an accident, that's a terror attack. And I knew something was wrong. I knew something was wrong. That was just not normal. It was not normal. And you could hear it on even the news reporter's voice. It was just panic, chaos, people screaming. It was I still remember like watching watching the TV and seeing and feeling how scared that person was, who the cameraman and the news reporter. And it was like just being in a horror film, just watching it live. And we were there like, what's going on? And everyone's in a panic. Then we find out another plane had gone into the Pentagon. And so at this time, everyone's just, I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. And I just remember like, it was mad. I'll be honest, I don't even have words to say. But the first instant was, my mom was like, if it's a world war or something, if there's a war or an attack on America, she was like, I have to get home. I have to get home to my family. And I remember she saying something like to the uncle, she was like, if we're going to die, I need to die with my family. I need to get home to England. But then, all the phone lines had gone dead. We couldn't ring. We couldn't contact anyone for I think a couple of days. We're trying to, obviously, it had said on the news that all flights have been suspended in and out of America. Like no one's going anywhere, and it was just that day was just a blur. We were obviously also worried about the eldest daughter who had gone into the city for uni. So obviously we're worried about her. We hadn't heard from her, and my mom is also trying to get us back, but there was no flights, and it was just mental, absolutely mental, and we couldn't contact anyone. So many people thought, were you on that plane? Because you don't know the details and stuff. You just think two planes have gone. Luckily, and her mom was supposed to be flying back that day. No, you don't remember flight details and stuff. You just automatically think the worst. And because we didn't have any method or means to contact anyone, because all the phone lines were down, there was no internet, nothing, we couldn't get in contact to say that, hey, actually, no, we're okay. We're not on those planes, or we're not even in the city, thank God, because we're not staying at that hotel anymore. It was a very scary time for everyone because we didn't have any contact. So this is where when we were in lockdown in COVID 5 years ago, I know it was a very scary time for everybody, but I still remember that I just kept finding the gratitude of like, at least we can still use our phones, we can video call each other, we can keep in contact with our loved ones, because I remember for 2 days there was no contact. We had no contact, no way of contacting other people, because everything had gone dead. It was madness. It was like an apocalypse. And that night, on the 11th night, there was a lot of crying, a lot of tears. There's a lot of confusion. Nobody knew what was going on. And then I couldn't sleep. I think I finally fell asleep due to exhaustion. And my mom was saying that during my sleep, I was like shivering and crying in my sleep. So yeah, it was very strange. And then I just remember my mom looking out of the window. She couldn't sleep, and it was about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and these sirens start going off. And for us, that sound we've always associated here in England as that's like when it was World War II, and the sirens would go off to say you have to go into the bomb shelter. And so that's what we've seen in and learned in history classes, and you see it in the movies that these are the sirens, and that's what would happen when bombs were being dropped in the area. So we hear these sirens go off, and my mom obviously starts freaking out. And I have to say, I've never seen my mom freak out. In 40 years, I've never seen my mom ever lose her cool. She's such a strong woman, one of the strongest women I've ever known. She's just like very calm. She's like, right, it'll get sorted. I have faith. I know it's going to get sorted. She knows it's going to get sorted. Even the numerous times that we've had accidents or very near-death experiences, my mom has kept so calm, and she's just been a freaking legend. And Mom, I fucking love you so much. I don't say it enough. I know I don't. But there was a one time where I saw my mom really scared. And then that's when she said, she goes, if we're going to die, if it's a world war, I need to be home with my family. I need to die with my family. I remember hearing her say that to that uncle. And that really scared the shit out of me. I was like, fucking hell. This is it. This is the end. This is the end of the world. And then my uncle actually then explained, actually, no, that it's nothing. It's nothing to worry about. He was like, that's the sound of what they use to get the volunteer firemen on rotation. So they were calling in for help for Ground Zero, obviously. And so that kind of calmed my mom down a little bit. And yeah, it was strange because I remember by the third day, there was smog, there was dust, there was ash. We couldn't even go outside. It was awful. Like, not that anybody wanted to go outside. It was very eerie. It was like a ghost town. And I remember, I think the mayor had put out a message to urge people, please go and go out, go to the malls, go to a restaurant, support the local community. We have to carry on. We cannot let terror win, and we cannot be scared to go out. It kind of gave people a little bit of a pep talk to say, right, let's go out. And I remember we went to the mall, and it was so eerie. It was so eerie. Like, no one was talking. It was this weird, eerie silence, and everyone's just there, and it was like zombies. We're just walking around. Nobody really wanted to buy anything. Not much appetite. We were just almost like just eating enough to just not faint, because it was just a weird, really weird feeling. And then finally, I think we got the call, because when the lines were back up every day, my mum was on the phone to the airlines trying to see if we can get a flight back. And they kept saying, you're just on standby. And when you get the call, you have to get to the airport. So basically, we had to have our bags packed at all times, because as soon as we got the call from the airport, we had to be at the airport within a certain time period, something ridiculous. I can't even remember what it was. And then when we did get the call, after 5 days, I think, we got to the airport, and the queue, my goodness, the queue was coming out of the airport itself, round the block, and almost to where the car park was. It was insane. I've never seen a queue like it before. And trust me, I've been to a lot of festivals and gigs, and everyone's trying to get home. And the journey to try and get home was it might have to be another episode in itself, because no one had boarding passes. The boarding passes were handwritten. They were just putting you on any plane to just get you out of the country. Doesn't matter if you're from England. No, you're getting on this plane. It's going here. You just need to get on it. So we were on the first flight out to Italy. It was like, okay. So we weren't even going home. We're going to another country. And then when we get to that country, then we've got to figure out how we're going to get back to England. because they just wanted you out, and we were just like, oh my gosh, it was insane. We get on the flight to Italy, Air Italia, and we didn't realize it was the first flight that had left the States to come in and land in Italy. And I'm there like looking like a freaking ghost, probably because I haven't eaten properly for 4 days. I'm wearing my glasses, which I never ever. I'm only just starting to like get to grips with being out in public with my goggles, honestly. But back then, it was just never a thing. But I had my glasses on because I'd been crying my eyes out. And it was just awful because people were just saying stuff to us, looking at us, treating us differently because we were brown. So not only have we just gone through some like this trauma of this horrible experience, but now on top of that, we're also having to deal with other people's racism and remarks and just treatment of because of the color of our skin. And it was just horrific when I think back on it now. I have blocked a lot of part of this out of my brain because trauma, now trying to relive it and remember it, is coming back into the forefront. I suppose it's a good thing because it's just going to be released and healed in some way, shape, or form. There's so many things that happened on the way back. I'm just trying to make this an episode not too long. And so there I am, like looking like death warmed up pretty much. Me and my mom. And because we were like on the first couple of rows on the plane, we're the first people out. They probably thought put the brown people right away from anybody. But why would you put us at the front in it? We're right next to the pilots. I don't know. Anyway, we were the first lot out. And as we walk out of the airplane, I just see all these flashes of light. Oh my gosh, blinding me. I'm like, what the hell has just happened? But it was all this paparazzi newspapers there because they were taking photos because we were the first flight that had just landed out of the US post 9/11. So obviously people wanted a story, and I remember somebody shoving a microphone in my face and asking me in Italian, and I just said, I'm English, I don't speak Italian. And I was probably really rude, but I was just like not expecting it. And so I do have a lot of compassion for celebrities because it was just very intrusive, especially because I didn't expect it at all. So especially when you don't expect it, it was really horrific just having like people all come around you and all these lights going off in your face and then people trying to talk to you and shoving microphones and talking a different language. It was just like very overwhelming. And I just felt really, I can't even remember how I felt at the time. I was just like, I don't understand what's happening. And I got a little bit scared again because I was like, oh my God, is it because they think we're terrorists or are we going to get arrested or something? It was all these thoughts coming through our mind all at once. It was just really, really, I don't know, I keep saying traumatic, but that's the only word I can describe it as, very traumatic. And then with my mom, and I have so much respect for my mom. Like she sorted everything out. And so my mom's there trying to get us flights back to England, which wasn't happening because they were making so many excuses for us not to get on planes. And at every single security check, we were getting pulled aside. We were getting like interrogated about every single thing. Back then you could take whatever you can on, my mom had a vanity case with nail clippers, little bits and bobs, tweezers and all that stuff. They took all of that off her. Not off anyone else, by the way, just putting it out there, not off anyone else, just off us, the brown people. I just remember like everyone else was getting checked as well, but not in the way we were. And that was the first time I was just like, wow. But you know what? At the time, I didn't even care. I was like, yeah, fucking check us because I don't want to be on a plane where there's another fucking terrorist. Like, check everyone. But it's only when I step back now when I see that they were being very, very thorough with us. And to the point where it was almost like, well, you're not getting on this plane. And I remember arguing with one of the people. I was like, how are you not letting us on the plane? And they said, oh, because you've got a handwritten boarding pass. But everyone had a handwritten boarding pass that was coming out of New York because all the systems had been crashed. There was no like internet. So everything was being handwritten. And I remember my mom trying to like reason with the guy saying, look, we need to be on that flight. We need to get back home. And the flight wasn't even back to England. We had to get a flight to France because everything was just up in arms. Airlines were all over the place. And I just remembered, I was like, hang on a minute, you have to let us on that plane because our luggage is on that plane. And somehow that worked because we were there, the plane's about to leave and they wouldn't let us on the plane. And so I'm there at the boarding gate trying to like reason with the guys saying, and they were just using any excuse. And then something just came over me and said, wait, hang on a minute, you have to let us on because our suitcases are on there. So by some miracle that worked. We were on that plane to France and then we got to Paris, and then because of the delay from the plane to Paris, we missed our connecting flight to Birmingham. And I think by that time, we were like so mentally and physically drained. My mom's there trying to get a flight out on the same day, saying, "Look, we've been stuck in New York," and telling her the whole reasonings. And they were like, "I'm sorry, flights are fully booked." My mom ringing my dad and my dad just saying, just get on the first flight out. Whatever it costs, just get back, put it on the credit card, just get back home. And so my mom had to pay like an insane amount for first class tickets from Paris to Birmingham, just so we could get back home. And unfortunately, we had to stay a night in Paris because there was no flights left going out on that same day. So to put it in context, our flight to New York and probably our whole trip expenses didn't match up to those 2 tickets that it cost my mom and dad to fly us back from Paris to Birmingham. Crazy, right? But then I remember also just feeling so defeated. We had to stay a night. My mom was like, how do we even, at that point, we were so exhausted. We were just going to sleep in the airport. And then I remember, so I've got to double check this with my mom. And when she does come on as a guest, I will double check this with her. Somehow we ended up in a little hotel at the airport, and because we had like run out of money, like physical money, and my mom had just maxed out her card paying for these flights. We had very little cash with us, no means or method to get any more cash out. And so we had to budget for the taxi to and from the airport because we couldn't miss this flight. And then we hadn't eaten for like 2 days. Like there was no food on the planes. Our whole thing was like, we just need to get home. So we hadn't eaten for 2 days, barely had water or anything. And I remember in the hotel room, my mom like counting pennies and the francs or whatever, like very little money that we had. And she was like, let me just see what food I can get from the vending machine, because it was really late at night, so nothing was even open. So there was only a vending machine where we could get some food. All my mum was saying that, let's just get some hot food. And obviously for her, it was like, I just need to get my child something warm to eat. Let me just try and get some hot food. And like I said, we were very strict vegetarians back then. And my mum went to the vending machines and there was like only meat stuff there that was warm. And then I think my mum said, I'll get a hot dog and I'll take out the sausage and we can just eat the warm bread. And she tried to do that and there was nothing left in the vending machine anyway. So then all she could get was like a bar of chocolate and one of those small tubs of Pringles. So she brought that back to the room and one like bottle of Coke. And basically we were like rationing that. We were just eating that little by little. And my mum was like, look, save some for tomorrow because you're going to need some energy as well tomorrow. We had to get up at a ridiculous time, like 3 o'clock in the morning or something, to make sure that we got the transfer to the airport. It was crazy. And then I remember coming back to England and I just collapsed and just cried. I think we all just cried when we got home. And the funny thing was that I was starting my A-levels, and because they'd made it very clear, like, you can't miss any days of school, obviously. So because I was only going to be missing really the Monday and the Tuesday, we hadn't told my school that I was going to New York for the weekend because we flew out on Friday and then we would have been back by Tuesday and I would be back into school on Wednesday. My dad was like, don't tell them, just say that you've got food poisoning. So my dad goes and rings up on the Monday, doesn't he, on the 10th, saying, oh, look at me, he's not coming into school today because she's got food poisoning or something. So she might be back in tomorrow or Wednesday at the latest. So he's just gone and told my school that. Then obviously when I got stuck in New York, my dad had to then ring up my head teacher and say, sorry, miss, I had to tell a lie. We've sent Luckme to New York as a gift for passing her GCSEs or whatever he said. Her and her mum are in New York, and obviously they were meant to be back on Tuesday, and she was going to be back in school on Wednesday. But this has obviously happened, and now we don't know when they're coming back home, but they're safe, but we just don't know when to back home. So can you imagine my dad having to make that phone call? Fucking hell. I just remember they're going back into school, and it was so weird. Like, I walked into my sixth form common room and everybody just started clapping, and like a few people came running up and hugged me, and they were like, oh my God, we thought you were dead, and we're just really glad that you're back home and safe. And so it was just really weird, surreal experience, and actually really strange having to relive it back. Yeah, so this episode's just been a little bit of a not so polished one, I should say. I'll be very honest, it was this was a really difficult episode. I thought my dad's episode was going to be really difficult to record, but I feel like this one was also very difficult because I haven't talked about the experience of 9/11 in such detail for such a long time. And a lot of it I've also just blanked out, I think. For I'd say about 6 or 7 years, I couldn't even read the newspapers. I couldn't watch anything on TV associated with 9/11. I couldn't talk to people about it because it was just so traumatic. And there was a lot of survivor's guilt as well. And like replaying every little decision. And, like I said, my uncle making us cancel that hotel, all the what ifs and all the whys. And it was just really difficult to process. And I think that's why this has actually been quite difficult to record, because I haven't talked about it for so long in such detail. I will get my mum on and we'll talk about it a little bit more from her perspective as well. And I know she also suffered with a lot of survivor's guilt. But I do remember, like, my mum would always be the one to say whenever we'd bought something nice, she'd say, save it for a special occasion. And I had done a bit of shopping from, yes, Abercrombie and Fitch. I was a bit obsessed with it back in the day, but didn't realise how problematic it was after watching White Hot on Netflix. But yeah, I still remember what I'd bought. I bought some jeans and this top, white long sleeve top that said pure on the front and then evil on the back. I don't know why I bought it, but I did. And usually I would have waited to wear that because it's like a proper Abercrombie from like the flagship store and all that stuff. But my mum was the one who said, no, you wear it today when you first go back to school, like wear it. And I think it also helped her like just realize that actually we should just wear things or use things straight away. There's no need to like save it for a special occasion because you never know if that's going to come. The only use we have is the here and now, this present moment. You have no idea what's going to happen in the next second, never mind minute. You don't know what's going to happen. So just I guess it was a stark reminder to just live in the present and be in the present as much as possible. We do tend to forget that though, but it's times like this and tragedies like this where you kind of get that kick up the ass and be like, oh my God, yeah. So I apologise for the craziness of this episode. It's not as polished as I would have probably liked, but it is what it is. Sometimes you're going to get really clean, structured episodes, and sometimes you're going to just get it raw and unreal like this. So as always, we're going to end on the 1 minute meditation. And today I would like to dedicate just 1 minute of silent meditation and healing and positive vibes to all of those who were affected, who had lost their lives, who are going through survivor's guilt still 24 years later. let's just give 1 minute of our thoughts, our prayers, our healing to those all over the world. So if it is safe for you to do so, please go ahead and close your eyes. Take a nice deep breath in through your nose, hold, and then breathe out through your mouth. And just take a nice deep breath in through the nose, hold, and breathe out through your mouth. Thank you so much for listening and being here and being in my space. Please do share this episode with anyone you think would benefit. Also, please feel free to share it on your socials. Make sure you tag at the 111 approach and I will share every single one. And also please do rate the show, download this episode, leave a comment. You know, the reviews and the ratings do really matter. Not that I care about being at the top of the charts. It's not to do with that at all. It does help with this podcast being recommended to people who listen to similar kind of podcasts. So it just helps really just to get the message out. And hopefully if you've resonated with anything I've said on this episode or any other episodes, you know, somebody else out there might need to hear that as well. And that's the only reason I asked to share it. Really don't give a shit about being on top. Like some people say, oh, it's a number 1 podcast or number top 10. I was like, I don't give a shit because it really doesn't matter to me. I'm sorry. Like it really doesn't matter to me. For me, it's more about helping people who might need to feel a little less alone in this world. And if I can do that, I will. But I also need your help. So anyway, I will see you all on the next episode. Sending you love, light, and blessings.